subject matter wise, these bubble images that you're looking at are all models of human protein, most of them made by Rod McKinnon, who got the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2003 for figuring out how a positively charged ion moves across the cell membrane. Or the ion, the center of the molecule, is a positively charged salt ion. And the salt ion has a water wrap around it that makes this tiny ion this big. And he had to figure out how it went through the channel, and he figured it out through X-ray crystallography. He figured out that the atomic polarity of the channel was the same as the atomic polarity of the water molecule wrap, and that allowed this thing to drop through the channel. And those ions, those salt ions, move at 100,000 to a million per second, and that's how the electricity works in your body. So I worked with him for about 5 years. I used all his imagery. What happened, a bunch of artists were invited to go to Brookhaven Labs, and I got on the first trip. I met some really great people on that trip, and the first thing I did was spend about 3 years working with their particle accelerator. It was like a fantasy of imagery for me to work at Brookhaven because there's so much good information. They wrap these things in aluminum foil, and I love the way that they look, and somehow that retains the heat and makes it easier for these protons to shoot through a tube and make an image of a dot pattern as the protons pass through a crystallized form of human protein. These are the machines that actually make the images over here. That's an X-ray crystallography machine. So I go in and we look at his notebooks. I photograph the ones that I like, and I silkscreen them onto paintings. What Becky's doing now is registering one of the proteins, which he's got different, molecules or different atoms in the protein identified. It has something to do with the function of which I don't know. We're going to print that now. I was thinking a little bit of my Venetian Tiepolo painting and the idea that these things look like clouds floating in space. And I love that kind of dreamy space when you look up at the clouds and try to find pictures in them. So I guess it's my Rorschach cloud piece. But now what we're doing is we're going to match that color. And maybe put some transparency in it, right? There's only one registration there. So as I went to Brookhaven, they had the coolest tools ever. They have this particle accelerator, and they go like, you can play with this toy. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Just previous to that, I'd been teaching in Hong Kong at Chinese University. And I started getting involved in this Neolithic pottery, which wasn't expensive. And I thought like, wow, this is the first thing made by civilization. They take clay out of the ground and they make something out of it, usually to store something, and then they start giving it some kind of design. And it occurred to me that what was going on in Brookhaven was they were doing the most advanced thinking about the state of the universe and matter, which is at Brookhaven, what they're trying to figure out is, can they split up a proton into its smaller parts, a quark and a gluon, with enough pressure by running them at the speed of light at a temperature of absolute zero and make something called quark gluon plasma. So I did this kind of timeline between Neolithic Chinese pottery and the most advanced thinking about matter. So that's an X-ray of a pineapple that I do in a cancer hospital in Sao Paulo. Yeah, you need a high resolution X-ray machine so you can take the digital files, work them on Photoshop, and then get an image that's looking like this. So the idea of the project, which is called Health of the Planet, the pitch is if the Amazon are the lungs of the planet, I'm giving Brazil a medical checkup by taking x-ray of the lungs. This is a really well-known Brazilian fruit, which you will know, called jaca. I think it's also a breadfruit. It's called jackfruit. And I went to this market in Sao Paulo. The market is miles by miles by miles. These are orchids. And then we may look at that sculpture if we go to Longhouse tomorrow. This is the image on the glass of the sculpture for the rose. So that's the x-ray of that image, which I put on a sheet of glass for the sculpture. We are going to Longhouse Reserve, the back way. And Longhouse is a sculpture garden in East Hampton of really great quality. It was Jack Leonard Larson, who's a fabric designer, founded it, and he's got a great garden. There's de Kooning, Louise Bourgeois, Brian Hunt, Saul LeWitt, big piece. Yoko Ono has a big piece there. There's a lot of Dale Chihuly. He likes Dale Chihuly's work. There's a Steve Miller. And there must be 100 pieces in the garden, so we'll take a look. Okay, this is the container show of people putting things in containers. There's some artists. Joe Zucker's got a piece in the back. You know, this is getting more towards sculpture on this level. So, the idea on this was basically, you know, to sit here and look through the piece and look at the show through another container.